The United States and Iran have reached an initial agreement aimed at ending the war, now stretching far into its fourth month. The memorandum is not a final peace treaty, but establishes a 60-day window for the two sides to resolve outstanding disputes and negotiate a more comprehensive agreement, including on the fate of Iran's nuclear program and sanctions relief for Tehran. President Trump announced the framework yesterday on social media, writing that the deal will reopen the Strait of Hormuz and that he had authorized the removal of U.S. naval blockades on Iranian ports. The president also told the New York Times the key waterway will be permanently toll-free, which, if true, would simply just be a return to pre-war conditions. It's what it always was before. Pakistan's prime minister, whose country has worked as a mediator on this deal, said the agreement would cease military operations on all fronts, including in Lebanon. He added the official signing ceremony will be held Friday in Switzerland. Iran's deputy foreign minister confirmed on state TV that a deal was reached, but said Tehran would not start implementing it until it was signed on Friday. Israel, which wasn't party to the negotiations, says it will not withdraw from territory seized in Lebanon. The country's far-right national security minister said the U.S.-Iran agreement, quote, does not bind us in any way. Now, aside from the readouts from officials, the text of the agreement wasn't released, and gaps are already forming between the U.S. and Iran on what exactly the agreement means. Iran, for example, is insisting the 60-day clock begins only after the U.S. starts releasing billions in frozen funds, while the U.S. says the release of assets will be tied to Iranian compliance. Now, although outstanding issues on Iran's nuclear program are being pushed to the next round of negotiations under this framework, President Trump is comparing his memorandum to the 2015 deal reached under President Obama, telling the New York Times his agreement would assure that Iran, quote, cannot develop or purchase a nuclear weapon. However, that same promise appears in the very first paragraph of the original Iran nuclear deal brokered by world powers that Trump himself withdrew from during his first term in office. Quote, Iran reaffirms that under no circumstances will Iran ever seek, develop, or acquire any nuclear weapons. Right there from 2015. It all comes as President Trump is on his way to France for the G7 summit. The president boarded Air Force One just after 3 a.m., only a few hours after the end of the UFC fights at the White House, to celebrate his birthday. Trump's announcement of a deal to end the war with Iran will be a key topic for G7 leaders. French President Emmanuel Macron has scheduled the most contentious topics to be discussed in the first 24 hours. The agenda includes the Iran war and its impact on energy supplies, as well as the Ukraine war. Macron has invited Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky to that summit. Tomorrow morning, Zelensky is expected to meet with summit leaders in hopes of securing more support against Russia's years-long invasion of his country. So much for us to get into. MS Now White House reporter Lara Barón-Lopez is here on set with me. So let's start with the Iran deal, because already we're seeing the president trumpet it as a win. We're seeing Iran and Israel already have different views of what this actually means. And it means that it's already been a tumultuous fight to get here, but it looks like it's going to be a bumpy road ahead, too.
A very bumpy road ahead. And I think that when you take a step back and you think about what just played out since Friday and over the weekend, I think an important point here, and also a note of caution, is that the president has said multiple things over those last few days that have ended up not being true, that are not true, including the fact that just yesterday he was saying that this was going to be signed on Sunday. It was not signed on Sunday. It's going to be signed Friday, they say. And so the president was also saying yesterday that he hereby authorizes the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. He alone doesn't have the authorization to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. And again, that is not going to be reopened until Friday.
Yep.
According to the Iranians, they're saying they're not going to be doing that. So I think that we have to be careful when we're just taking the statements from the White House, especially also given what they've said over the last few months about a deal being around the corner and one not materializing.
I know we've seen several memorandums of understanding. We've seen several deals that the president has trumpeted and then said, no, never mind. And then, of course, there's the way that Republicans on Capitol Hill are beginning to talk about this. Even Lindsey Graham was saying, well, you know, these things are typically ratified through Congress, interested in seeing what you send us. So there's a lot of eagerness to see what this deal actually was. Of course, it all comes against the backdrop of President Trump marking his 80th birthday last night with UFC Freedom 250, an invitation-only mixed martial arts event staged on the White House South Lawn. Broadcast on Paramount Plus, the event featured 7 UFC fights under an 80-foot canopy known as The Claw, alongside extensive promotion of Trump-affiliated businesses and sponsors. UFC President Dana White joined Trump for the opening, highlighting their long-standing political and business ties. Fighters entered beneath fireworks and military flyovers, while a giant video display connected the event to major moments in American history. Critics condemned the event's location and potential financial benefits for Trump and his allies. Efforts to shut the fight down were blocked by a federal judge on Friday. But I mean, this is really one of the indelible images, Laura, is them walking out onto effectively the pitch for this MMA fight on the White House South Lawn. I mean, what did we see? Like, this is a birthday party for an 80-year-old, basically.
It is a birthday party for an 80-year-old. It's also this massive, gladiator-type blood sport being played on the South Lawn with the backdrop of the People's House. We've never seen anything like this. The historians that I talked to in the lead up to it said there is no parallel compared to what other presidents have done on White House grounds. Yeah. There are presidents like Obama and others who added private use facilities, whether it was adding a basketball court or adding a tennis court. But those were for their private personal use. They weren't to have big events for profit. This was a big event for profit. And I think that, to me, the real story here, underneath all that spectacle, yes, it was for the president's birthday. It wasn't necessarily really a celebration of the country's 250th anniversary. But underneath the spectacle, the real story is that the president stands to profit from this event because he bought stock in the parent company of UFC, TKO Holdings, right before this event was announced. And then he also launched that coin in coordination with UFC, which goes for as much as $12,000, and profits from that go to his licensing company. Dana White, who was walking out there with the president, a longtime friend and ally of the president, also stands to benefit, and also on the sidelines of this inked a deal with the State Department to get millions from them to hold clinics. So again, you're seeing time and time again that when companies and private donors deliver for the president, give him a big event like this, donate to his ballroom, donate to his what he wanted to be his Kennedy Center.
Yeah, that was also this weekend.
That then they end up getting contracts with the government in exchange for
I also think it's striking that it's aired on Paramount Plus, which, of course, is now one of the Ellison properties. And the news that we got Friday, Saturday, was that the DOJ is approving that massive merger now. And again, another example of what you're talking about, where if you do business with this White House, they'll do business with you right back. And it does beg the question, are they keeping the claw? Like, that's something that was floated as well. Do we even know?
They said that they're going to start taking it down right away in court filing. So again, I think so much of what is actually reality and the truth ends up coming out in the court filings versus what comes out of the president's mouth, because the president had said and others had said maybe we keep it around. But in court, the government said that they would start the teardown of it almost immediately after the event.
So then if we double back to where we began, another instance of the president saying one thing and then maybe, we don't know, we haven't read the memorandum of understanding yet, maybe the underlying details being different. Do you imagine, given the shades of similarities between this current Iran deal and the Iran deal in 2015 that the president ultimately pulled the U.S. out of, that there is continued pushback from the Hill? Because we saw a little bit of that the last time we were in this kind of a position where a framework was being floated on background in the press, and then ultimately the administration pulled back.
I think so, because one of my biggest takeaways from the president's statements on Truth Social last night, also what Vice President J.D. Vance said to Fox about the Iran deal yesterday, is that they did not mention, the president himself didn't mention at all the nuclear weapons program or the future of the nuclear weapons program for Iran. There was no mention of the enriched uranium stockpile, which how do you ensure that Iran absolutely ensure, because the president said JCPOA didn't, that the Obama deal didn't.
Yes.
How do you absolutely ensure that Iran doesn't have the capability to build a nuclear weapon if you don't touch that enriched uranium stockpile? There was no mention of that in the president's statement, which the White House was linking to on Truth Social. The only mention in the president's statement of anything that was potentially concrete was reopening the Strait of Hormuz, which, as you said, Ali, this was not an issue before the war started.
Exactly. And I also think what I'm seeing in this, and look, it makes sense that they might need more time to negotiate an issue as complex as Iran's nuclear program and the ways in which they enforce making sure they're not enriching uranium, making sure that any enriched uranium is taken out of the country. That's why it took so long for the Obama era folks to negotiate this JCPOA deal back in 2015. I get that they need more time, but effectively this deal reads to me, and again, we're not reading the exact deal yet, that they need 60 days to actually get into the complex stuff, but they want to end the war because polls show it's unpopular, it's hurting the presidency, and of course Americans are concerned about gas prices and among everything else that they're not able to pay for, or feeling that it's affordability crunch right now.
Right.
It's a lot. We will continue tracking all of it, especially as he heads overseas now. MS Now White House reporter Laura Barone Lopez, as always, thank you.
Thank you.